rather than give a little talk or teaching, is ask you for topics. What do you wish that Jack would talk about tonight? Raise your hand and you can say it in the mic. Whatever it is, forgiveness or, a good recipe or something, whatever.
Feeling the love in the heart.
Feeling the love in the heart. Another?
Regret.
Say that again.
Regret.
Regret. Thank you.
Living with or dealing with grief or sadness.
Living or
loss.
dealing with grief. Yes.
Can you recommend the right amount of meditation to achieve a inner sense of well-being?
Okay, the right amount for well-being.
Deepening.
Shame?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Satisfaction.
Satisfaction?
I can't get no.
Can you say one more, a sentence about it, just so I understand it?
I guess the relation between dissatisfaction and satisfaction and how we can maintain satisfaction.
Got it. How to find satisfaction or maintain it. Great. Another question? Another topic.
Deepening.
Wait, say that again.
Deepening metta practice for yourself.
Metta for yourself. Metta for yourself. Okay. Ooh, yeah, let's take a breath. I think the first thing is just to notice that a great deal of the themes that are here, whether it's grief or shame or regret or anxiety or fear or resentment, in some way it's why people come to meditate. We come for the medicine of the Dharma because of the first noble truth of the Buddha. And the first noble truth is that life has suffering. Anybody not have that, please raise your hand. Yes, of course. But fortunately, the first noble truth is not the end of the story. And that's the thing that really changed me in my own life. I was in college and I was studying pre-med and doing all the science courses. And I came from organic chemistry, and there was this professor of Asian studies who'd come up from Harvard to Dartmouth to teach. And he started talking about Taoism and Lao Tzu and talking about Confucius. And then he said, and then there's the teachings of the Buddha of suffering, that life has suffering, its causes, and freedom from it. And I grew up in a painful family. My father was a kind of brilliant scientist, but he was also violent, a wife batterer, a tyrant, all kinds of things. He was kind of out of control. And I leaned forward and I said, this is something I have to learn. So I hear these topics and they both touch me because I can feel the suffering in them. But I also know that they're a gateway. It's exactly, that meditation is exactly the medicine. Mindfulness, compassion, loving kindness is the medicine for these sufferings and difficulties. Just reflecting for a minute and also just trying to hold all this in my own heart. I'm remembering a passage from a Sufi sage who said, overcome any bitterness because you were not up to the magnitude of the suffering that was granted to you. You are like the mother of the world who holds the whole world in her heart. You are a part of her heart. And as a human being, you are given a certain measure of cosmic pain. You are called upon to hold it in compassion instead of self-pity. So I could say different things about these specific topics, and I might work with a few of you individually again, but let me say a few things about them, because they're so close to the bone. Grief has its own seasons, and it can't be hurried. It takes as long as it takes, and we live in a culture that doesn't really know how to grieve. And what grief wants more than anything else is to be held and respected. The tears, and maybe it's the anguish of the grief or the loss. Trying to fix it, get rid of it, change it. It needs its voice to be heard, its emotions to be respected and held in a great heart of compassion. And the amount that you can bring of kindness to the grief, almost like I would say, feel where it is in your body. You can feel it. And then notice what happens if you wrap it with kindness and compassion, as if you were holding a child who had lost something and was sobbing or filled with grief. When you wrap your grief in compassion, not trying to fix it, not trying to make it go away, just saying, I hear your cries, I feel with you. You begin to notice what happens. And you find that even that grief, even the unbearable grief, in some way has its season. And I started with this partly because it popped out from the list, but also because it gives a kind of roadmap or recipe for the resentment or the fear or the shame, the anxiety, the regret. Maybe you take the regret and you write yourself a long letter. You don't have to mail it because you can give it to yourself of all the things you regret, whatever they are, and then put it in your hands in the kindest way and say, let me hold this with kindness. And then try to imagine as you do, how many people in this world have regret? How many people in the room right now have some regrets in your life? Raise your hand. Almost every hand. Yeah, I read somewhere the first thing you realize in your life growing up is that you're a fool. And the last thing you learn is that you're the same fool. We all have our regrets. There are things we could have done better. There are ways we could have acted more loving. And it hurts the heart. Whether you reach out to someone or not, mostly it has to be solved in yourself. Can you hold that regret? You write it, and then maybe you put it in the lap of Kuan Yin or the Buddha or Mother Mary and say, will you hold this with me? I know you hold it for so many millions of beings. Let's hold it with compassion. Somehow wrap yourself in kindness and say, yes, this is painful. I wish I had done it differently. I regret. Now let me bring kindness to it. For that's what heals. Mindfulness to know it clearly, a willingness to feel it, to bear it, and then a tender heart that says, oh yes. Because this tenderness to it allows you to learn and live more fully present and kinder. You can't get it to go away by not wanting it. Whether it's anxiety, or fear. The antidote to fear, the Buddha taught for these monks and nuns who went out into the forest after he taught them meditation, and in the middle of the night there were the growls of the wild animals and all kinds of dangers, and they came running back, and he said, let me teach you the practice that is the antidote to fear. And it was the first time, at least as the story is told, that loving kindness meditation was taught formally. He said, if you practice loving kindness toward yourself and others, the world will feel it. You will be kinder, you'll sleep with greater ease, your body will feel well-being and health. And that field of love will be the great protection. It doesn't mean simple-minded, that, okay, you do your loving kindness and then you can go to the zoo and open the cages and go cuddle up to the tigers. But you know what it means. It becomes a kind of gift and power and radiance. And the people you know who carry the loving spirit, that you can feel it from them, live with a kind of grace. This love, one of the great Zen teachers said, enlightenment and this love is to be without anxiety about imperfections. The world is imperfect. It has its sufferings and confusion and people don't do what we want. I'm sure you've noticed that. Your own body and mind don't do what you want. So what then? Then you have the wisdom of the heart that says, this human incarnation, I can sit in the midst of it all and wish myself well, even with my ADHD and anxiety and the struggles. I'll hold them with kindness. I can sit with that little girl or little boy that feels so ashamed because you learned it really early, and put my arm around their shoulder and say, yeah, I know that's hard to feel, and it's not who you really are. Because when you start to sit, you realize that these are not who you really are. The well-being that someone asked about is resting in the vast field of loving awareness, in the power of mindful loving awareness, and say, yes, this is human incarnation. And the Buddhist texts begin, O nobly born, remember who you are. You can be the loving witness to the joys and the pains, to the gain and loss, to the fear and ease that make up humanity in your life. Remember that you are the Buddha. You are the one who knows, who sees. This is the answer to satisfaction. Satisfaction doesn't come from getting rid of dissatisfaction. I can't get no. Even the satisfaction to be satisfied is to take your seat in the middle of the cosmos and say, wow, what a ride. What a measure of pain. And what an incredible, mysterious beauty of an autumn day, and the stars by the billions in the sky, and the earth that breathes herself. The question is not the future of humanity, but the presence of eternity. Yes, we live in chaotic and troubled times, all these difficulties, and you're asked to be a Buddha and to center yourself. And the last little story I'll tell is of Gary Snyder, now in his 90s, who received a Pulitzer Prize as a poet and environmentalist 60 years ago, and been actively working as an environmentalist for all this time. And my friend, dear beloved friend, Wes Nisker, a teacher who died this last year, went to visit Gary and said, Gary, the oceans are rising. The refugees are streaming from the hot places. The animals are going extinct. What advice do you have to us about global warming and climate change? And Gary looked back and he said, don't feel guilty. Don't feel guilty or angry, because it's guilt and anger and fear that made this problem in the human heart. You're not going to save it out of guilt or fear or anger. If you're going to save it because you love it. That's the response. If you want to make a difference, do it from love, do it from the heart of love, even in the midst of all this. And you can. That's the amazing thing. You can be joyful. You can dance. You can do it in the midst of all these things. Like that book of the Dalai Lama and Bishop Tutu called the Book of Joy. They've lived through enormous suffering. And then somebody asked the Dalai Lama, how can you laugh? He said, so much has been taken from me. The people of Tibet are in exile. The temples have been burned. Our sacred texts have been stolen. So much has been taken. Why should I let them take my joy? Ask yourself. Because the world needs people who are awake and loving and courageous to be present for it, to become the Buddha that you are. I'll pause. I sort of blabbed for a bit about these topics and themes, and I found myself really touched by them, because we do carry them, but they're not the end of the story. They're the first noble truth. And then there's the path to freedom. You notice the fear and the anger and the despair and the grief. And then you have the path of compassion and mindful, loving awareness and integrity and courage, and more than anything, of love. And it doesn't change the world exactly, but it does. So, anyone want to elaborate on any of these things and ask me further? We'll do a little dialogue. Raise your hand if you want to pursue any of these themes.
Hi, Jack.
Hi, who's this?
Paige.
Hi, Paige.
I was the one who asked about feeling the love in the heart.
Yes.
You mentioned flavoring the awareness with love.
Yes.
And I feel that sometimes for me, the awareness can feel too empty.
Mhm.
And so I was wondering, other than the metta practice, how to directly feel more love of the heart.
Mm. It's a beautiful question. Thank you, Paige.
Mm-hmm.
So, a couple of things. The first one you may not want to hear is love the emptiness.
Right.
How about, you'll notice if you're careful and you pay close attention, you'll start to feel a coolness and an emptiness, spacious. You say, yeah, but I want that gooey love feeling. So there's a slight aversion. What happens if you actually say, when you give emptiness a kiss and you say, oh, so many people work so hard in their Zen practice to have this, and it's given to me. So that's the first step. How does that land?
I'm sure it would be useful because there is an aversion to it feeling too empty.
Yeah. What's that like? Close your eyes just for a second and see if you can remember what it feels like when it's really empty.
Yeah,
What's
it's just like too much nothingness.
too much nothingness? All right, so feel the too much nothingness
Mm.
and say, let me feel you more. Let it expand. Let it get as nothing as it can. See how big it gets. Interstellar space big. So how is it now when you give it space?
It's still very empty,
Okay, good.
and I guess I don't like it. Like you say, it's lacking the gooiness. It's lacking the flavor.
Right. So now,
Yeah.
now you feel it's very empty and it's huge. You're letting it be, and then feel it and say, "I love you, emptiness." Just play with it. Play with it for a minute. I just love you. People want you. I love you. You hold everything. You're so vast, and see how it responds.
Well, that's useful because in order to love it, I have to feel in my heart. So that allows me to feel in my heart.
Yeah. So does it allow you to say that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll bother you as long as you resist it. But if you embrace it, I mean, it's a treasure.
Mm.
People. And then instead of looking for the gooey love, how about joy? Remember when you were the happiest moments, happy moment of your childhood, when you were laughing and tickling and rolling around. Can you remember that?
Yes. It's been a long time.
And can emptiness allow for that joy too? Is there space for it?
Yeah, I suppose there's space for everything in emptiness.
Yeah, well, ask the emptiness. Can we bring
Okay.
joy in a little bit? See what it says.
I guess so.
Yeah, you guess so. I see you smiling. All right, this is good for now. Thank you for we're sort of playing together. But the key, and the question was, is that as long as you resist it, it'll be a problem. And if you say, oh, it's okay, I can allow you, I can hold you in loving awareness, then it's not a problem. And then you can bring in joy or whatever else you want. So thank you.
Thank you. It is a blank slate, so I guess I can bring in anything.
I guess you could.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure. Over toward me at this end.
Hey, Jack.
Hi,
My name is Armand, and
Armand. Great.
I'm, yeah, my question, I think, comes around to the practice, like, just the seated practice feeling like maybe a little mechanical, or maybe too serious, or maybe too, kind of practiced, so to speak.
Yeah.
And curious how to bring maybe a little more like humanity and diversity to like a daily practice.
Great. Tell me a little more about your daily practice. When do you sit, and what do you do?
Usually morning, midday, and sometimes in the evening.
How
Just
long? What do you do in those sittings?
like 10 to 20 minutes these days.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a fairly even mix of various guided meditations, my own practice, and more kind of like mostly honestly just kind of like bringing mindfulness to
So you do mindful presence. You listen to guided meditations.
yeah, it's
And
a mix.
do you do any of the kind of metta, loving kindness, compassion practices in that mix?
Yeah, so I'm the one that asked about like deepening metta for oneself, and I definitely don't do enough. Mostly because I definitely have. I find I guess the theme for tonight. I have a resistance to it.
What's the resistance? Tell me, I'm interested. If it has a little story.
Yeah, I think metta for others is a little more easily or just like attainable for me, like to feel those various sensations and emotions of,
Right.
and but directing it towards me is a little bit more challenging,
Yeah.
and um,
Yeah.
I guess I don't know. It's probably like something on the spectrum of like maybe not worthy of this love, or like or
Yes.
yeah, something maybe along those lines.
So these are really great questions, Armand. Thank you first for bringing them up. Because as you know, you probably heard the story of a whole bunch of us as teachers talking with the Dalai Lama years ago about self compassion and self hatred. And he didn't even understand the word self hatred because there isn't a word for it in Tibet. And he said, "But this is a mistake. How many of you feel this?" And then all of us in the room raised our hands. So it's hard for us in this culture, and you can feel that you're unworthy in some way, or what you post at the beginning, that the meditation can get serious. It can be like a grim duty. All right, I go to the gym, I work out, I have a good diet, and I'm going to keep my meditation going. I get tired even saying that, right? I mean, I know you're better than that, but I'm just sort of exaggerating it. Close your eyes for a moment. Take a breath. And then when you reflect on doing loving kindness practice for yourself, and there comes these feelings of it maybe being unworthy, or it doesn't feel quite right. Can you remember those feelings?
Just enough, yeah.
Yes. Next question, as you keep your eyes closed, is how old were you when you first felt this? How old do you think you were as a kid when you first felt whether it's unworthy or something not?
No, ages somewhere between somewhere around 10 comes to mind.
Okay, so picture 10-year-old Armand, and he's trying to figure out how to move through this world. And then somehow inside he thinks, well, there's something not quite right about me, or I'm not really worthy. We all have this, or almost all of us. And picture him and feel his kind of confusion in it, in a sense of unworthiness. And imagine you can put your arm around him, just playing with this picture, if he'll let you. See if he'd be okay with that.
He's okay. I don't know how I am.
Okay, so say, Armand, this is really hard for me. Young Armand. It's hard for me to do. Help me. And let this boy help you. He'll tell you something. You can know. You sort of help each other. You're discovering something here. It's not like you have to do it. You're learning.
It's like the wisdom wisdom of innocence and wisdom of age.
Yeah, and what does the young Armand want you to know? Yeah.
I guess to maybe not take it so seriously, but maybe be a little more playful or present, or like, I don't know, maybe just like free flowing, you know?
Yeah. So feel this and feel it in your body, because you carry this. You carry this young Armand, and you carry the wisdom of innocence. And feel the spirit of not taking it seriously. You're going to practice with your loving kindness or your mindfulness and make it more playful. Play with it. Let it be more flowing. How does it feel in your body and heart as you sense this?
It feels right. It feels like the right path, and thankfully, I actually am a very playful person. But
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah, I've never like intentionally tried to make my meditation practice playful.
So now your assignment, if you will, here's Jack
Yeah.
Kornfield giving you an assignment. Make your meditation really playful and enjoy it, because you've got this. I want everybody who's listening to hear that the wisdom that Armand was seeking, he carries. He already knows somewhere in there. And it's a beautiful wisdom. So, yeah, make it playful, mess with it, enjoy it, let it flow.
Thanks, Jack. I promise I'll have fun.
Yeah, I know. I'll give me the report later. Give me your grade. If you get an A in joy practice. All right. Thank you, Armand. That was fun.
Thanks, Jack.
So what we're, in these conversations, what's happening is that people are very genuinely bringing up their inner experience, whether it's the tightness of things being mechanical, or the emptiness with, a resistance to it because it's not juicy, or all the other kind of things that people have brought up. And what we're doing is bringing a mindful, loving attention. And normally you can sit and do your loving kindness practice, or you can do your mindfulness practice and let things flow, let them come and go. But then when something feels stuck, whether it's grief or resentment or things being mechanical or feeling empty, you can pause and turn the attention of loving awareness to this and say, instead of, you can notice the resistance, first of all, and you're going to approach it with curiosity, not to try to fix it or change it. But actually, what's hard becomes the place of learning. And you say, let me understand, let me feel you, show me how big you are, let me feel as fully as I can, open. Now let me bring a sense of loving awareness. What happens as I do? What do you want to teach me or tell me? And you'll learn things, you'll be freer in your experience with it. And then, okay, now that's digested. Now that's something that I'm freer with. Now I go back to being present for the breath and the rising and passing of sensations and feelings. So you learn how to shift from the openness of your meditation or your loving kindness to pay attention to things when they feel resistant or stuck and invite them to show themselves and to learn from them. Let's do one more.
Hi, Jack. My name's Brian. So these last two have resonated with me. I have a very steady daily practice which feels routine, but I do it every day and I have for many years. And
Wonderful.
as I listen to you now, though, I find myself with the following puzzle. I can loosen up my practice by saying what I will do is I will find a 10-minute guided metta meditation and listen to it at the beginning of the practice. However, in doing that, I'm taking myself away from my practice of being with what is, and I find myself conflicted. What do you say?
Well, first of all, it's a great question, and I think it's helpful for people that you raise it. I'm sorry to ask you to please close your eyes. You know, it's so interesting. People ask me these things as if I would know. But anyway, all right, and take a breath and just get quiet. And the question really is, you know, should I sit and just be with what is? Or should I spend part of that time doing a guided loving kindness meditation, but then I'm not being with it? And maybe today I'm feeling lonely or depressed or upset. Should I stay with that or should I do some metta, which softens it? This evening, today, here, you know, in Santa Monica, in September, just past the equinox, you started to sit in meditation. I did this guided practice. But if you were to do another 20 minutes of practice or 30 minutes, what is calling you? Is there something important that needs you to sit with it? Or does it feel like right now would be a time to do some metta and listen to guided practice? What do you find?
At this moment, my heart feels full and open. I don't
Yeah.
feel a need to intervene in any way. I fully expect, just out of many years, that when I sit tomorrow morning, I will become aware of a busy mind, and I will notice the busyness, and I will come back to the breath, and then I will be busy, and I will come back to the breath, and that will be the 20 minutes, and then the day will begin. So for this moment, what is, when I sit next, I know what I expect. Do I actively intervene with what is at that moment?
Beautiful, beautiful question. So stay with it and feel it, because you are already guided in the present moment to say, I don't need to do that. My heart's open. I could just sit this way. Tomorrow, it's quite possible there'll be a busy mind.
Yes.
Let yourself experiment. If you sit for 20 minutes and you do a 10-minute guided metta, do that for a week, and then sit for 10 minutes after it.
Mm-hmm.
And then another week, don't do that. And begin to listen. The main thing, I really respect your practice. I think it's beautiful that you have a regular and steady daily practice. And so I'm going to kind of build on what we've been talking about from Paige and Armand and so forth. What would happen if you bring in a sense of joy, playfulness? Because it feels like you know already, and there isn't a recipe. Sometimes I sit down and I know that I have to pay attention to something, or my mind is really busy and I just have to find a way to help steady and feel the breath and quiet. Other times it feels like I'm called to do metta, and you're doing it right now. You listened and you said, right now my heart's soft and open. I don't have to do anything else. Tomorrow morning with a busy mind, you might hear the message, it will be good to listen to a guided meditation for a bit, and that will quiet me down, and then I'll sit. Trust yourself. Trust your listening and your attention. Somebody asked Sharon Salzberg, can you do meditation wrong? And she smiled and she said, the only wrong meditation is the one you don't do. So you're actually, Ryan, you're actually in a very good course, and you get to be a little more playful. After these many years, it's beautiful. And trust yourself. I so much appreciate your question.
Thank you. For the next week, I will begin my meditation with a 10-minute metta guided and see what happens.
And see what happens. Exactly. One of the other things that people can do, and it kind of depends on what helps you and what floats your boat, is to have a meditation buddy. If you have a friend who's a meditator, and I'm thinking about my dear colleague and friend Sylvia Borstein, she actually has a gratitude practice, and she has this other teacher who's her gratitude buddy. And every day before the end of the day, she will text 2 things she's grateful for, and that other person will text a couple of things they're grateful for. But you could have a meditation buddy, and you could just text, yeah, this morning did metta, and it's just, what did you do? For some of us, it's really helpful to feel connected with another person and have that both support and responsibility and care. Of course, it evokes all of that. And part of what I hear in all the themes that were brought up, how do you feel love in your heart? How do you overcome regret or deal with it? How do you live with the grief that comes to us as human beings, sometimes really intensely, or shame? And of course, we're talked about bringing loving kindness and loving awareness. Underneath all these questions, I want you to sense is the quality of care. Brian cares about how to do it well. Armand doesn't want it to be mechanical. Paige wants to know, how do I do this in the spirit of love? These various themes that came up, resentment, fear, grief, and so forth, they come also not because of just the problems or the fact that they're there as part of our human lot and suffering, but they come from you because you care. And I want us to somehow feel that that's in the collective, just where we are. That's part of your Buddha nature, to care and to bring it to your meditation and to the difficult emotions and struggles that come, and realize that you can do this, and you can do this out of that place of care rather than of judgment or feeling that it's wrong. You're just being human. And if you bring care and compassion, that becomes the the medicine that transforms it all. Nobody's ever lived your life before, so there isn't a kind of recipe book for you of exactly what you should do. But in your meditation, you're becoming present, you're becoming more compassionate, and you're listening to your heart, and that will guide you. So let's sit for 1 minute as we finish tonight. And let yourself feel gratitude for the Insight LA community, all of us together, and all who help. And gratitude for the Dharma that reminds you of what you really know inside, that reminds you of your own capacity for love, compassion, and freedom, your own true nature. Thank you.